Hi, my name is Patrycja Rozwora, and you're listening to Kitchen Conversations. In each episode, I sit down with an artist, researcher, or activist whose work inspires me and offers new ways of understanding the complexity and diversity of contemporary Eastern Europe. If you enjoy listening to these monthly conversations, you can now support the podcast with a coffee donation of your choice at buymeacoffee.com/kitchenconversations. For a long time now, I wanted to invite someone to the podcast who could speak from the perspective of the Russian exile, actively working towards decolonizing the Russian imperial mind. I met Natasha Konradova through a human rights organization that she's working for. Our conversation was for me another reminder that behind a nationality and a passport stands not only a political responsibility, but also an individual. A person with a family, with passions, dreams, and fears. Welcome, Natasha, to Kitchen Conversations podcast.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
It's a good day because it's a sunny one. It's not every day in Berlin. So
That's
I feel
true.
Good.
For the beginning, I have probably an annoying question for a Russian speaker, but I don't speak Russian myself, so it's always a bit of a mystery with the names, like Natalia, Natasha.
Well, I prefer Natasha, which sounds more like familiar and friendly for Russians, and Natalia sounds more official. So in my documents, in my passport, for example, I'm Natalia. But for not only for friends, but also for colleagues, I would prefer to be Natasha.
Right. Is it like a nickname? Is it something like this?
It's just a short name of Natalia. I'm trying hard to be Natasha, but I fail when I communicate with Russians because they switch to Natalia.
Yeah. Okay, so you will be Natasha for this podcast. You sent me a very nice introduction about yourself. That's always very generous if people do that, because then I have a kind of idea of where you're coming from. We know each other from, let's say, other work circles, but it's very nice to meet you today for my podcast and also find out more about your research and your artistic, creative work as well. So you started as an academic researcher in Moscow, and in 2001 you wrote your PhD on kitsch. Back then I was 7 years old, so that's
But
funny.
already existed this time.
Yes. Later, you were researching war monuments for a long time. You were also interested in the Russian internet and started a long research there. In 2014, as I understand, you did like the big move from Russia to Europe.
First to Israel, where we lived there less than a year. And then I had an invitation to work at the university here in Berlin. So the same year, the next year, we moved to Berlin.
With your family?
Yeah, with my husband and first one kid, my son, and then my daughter accompanied us too.
And what was the push to leave Russia in 2014?
We thought about it before. I did not agree with my husband, who was always ready to move out from Russia. He's from a Russian Jewish family. It's a funny thing that Russian Jewish family usually, not all of them, but usually they always in the Soviet time too had this idea that there are other countries and that to move out is just an option. In my family, I also had Jewish relatives, and they were Jewish, part of them. But at the same time, they tried to hide it, and they never discussed it. So in my family, there was never an idea of moving out the Soviet Union or later Russia. So for me, it was an exotic thing to move out. And I had a very interesting job. And I worked as a journalist and at the same time as an academic researcher. Then I switched to journalism entirely. And I traveled a lot. I was on the Franz Josef Land, for example, 2 times. It's Arctics. And nobody can come to this place because there is no planes. Yeah, you can only be there because somebody invited you and brought them. I traveled to Kamchatka, almost the very east of Russia, many other places, and it was very interesting. And I made my kind of career in journalism, so I didn't expect any big changes in my life. But then the second Maidan in Kiev happened, and in a couple of months afterwards, occupation of Crimea, and everything changed inside Russia, too. And my work in journalism became less important because the information war started this time too. So they started to close some newspapers and magazines, and they supported only propaganda and so on. So I realized that I need to change my profession again. And my son was 5 years old. It meant he had to come to school. And my daughter was 17, which meant that she was going to apply for uni. So these 3 different factors made my decision. I said yes to my husband for the second time. I said, okay.
That's a big thing, right? Big step for the family as well.
I was not prepared at all. But I understood that the situation changed, and I didn't want for my son to be part of this ideologically very tight system, very not repressive yet at those time, but very active. Like the first lesson had to be about patriotism and Russia, and also maybe Russians, war aggression, and so on. So I didn't want it at all. And I didn't want for my daughter to make her first almost professional steps, like in uni, in Russia inside, right? So I thought, okay, if my children shouldn't be part of this, and I have to change my profession too, maybe we can change a country. That was my logics.
That's probably interesting for you to think back to it now, because now it's already long ago. And I guess you feel somehow home here? How does it feel to be?
Yes, I think so. But at the same time, it's complicated too, I would say. Because, I love Berlin, especially in summer. I hate winter Berlin with this spleen, depression, cough light, and everything, too. But I like it's like free spirit that people can look whatever they want and mostly do whatever they want. But there is one but. If they don't have children, have to go to school. Because school system and education system in Germany and in Berlin too is not for me, for my family, for my children at all. It's really hard for people who are not part of the system or who are not ready to follow all the system's rules. I don't mean law. It's obvious. We are following. If you have ADHD, for example, or you are neurodivergent, but not too much.
Just on the spectrum somehow.
Yes. If you are not under this special pedagogic, Sonderpädagogik, and you look like normal, this word, but at the same time, you can follow all the rules and
structures of the system.
Straight lines, I would say. In this case, you will be outside earlier or later, but you will be outside. So it's my new thing. It's my new thought.
Yeah.
So I work in an educational project too, but it's not systematic at all.
Yeah, can you tell something about it, because it kind of I think connects to what we just spoke about.
It's about history of the 20th century, mostly Soviet one, but also history of places which were under control or under influence of the Soviet Union. Ex-Eastern Europe, for example, is also in the focus. It started in 2022 as one project, like historical competition for young people. And the pilot year, the next year, 2023, we tried different ages, different approaches, different programs. And the next year, so 2024, we realized that we work with people 16 to 19 years old from the whole world, mostly in Russian. So we work online. We organized the educational program with lectures, workshops, and we decided that we need individual research projects from every participant of our program. But with time, it developed, it grew up so fast that now I'm running several educational programs. One of them is this online school with historical competition at the end. And the finalists, they are invited to our summer creative camp. There in the camp, we are making some documentary-based art, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Video, sometimes podcasts too, theater, shadow theater, animation, different.
And what is the focus there? Like, what do young people learn there? Or why is it, you think, important to give them this kind of out-of-school education in this area?
Yeah, the main idea is, I would say, human rights perspective to the history, to 20th century and Soviet history. That's why we always work with documents, first of all, primary sources, historical sources like memoirs, letters, other documents, pictures, and so on. Oral history too, interviews. And the second thing is that we try to look at a person, not trends, not big events, not war, not leaders of any state.
The big histories, right?
Not big history, yeah. Small histories in terms of personal scale and the experience of these people. How they sometimes were involved in resistance. Sometimes they were not. How they experienced this history in their personal and private biographies and stories.
Well, since we were already a little bit in the political side of it, of course, we still didn't speak about the big elephant in the room, I guess, as it a full-scale invasion, 22 February 2022, that I think it changed for all of us.
We were shocked, of course. I had a friend of mine at this time from Kiev at my place who brought her son to me just to leave him, to leave a little bit here in Berlin, to come back to Kiev, maybe to move to
pack a bit stuff in
Portugal. That was a plan. And the full-scale invasion started the day she was at my place. So we were all shocked. For me, it was much easier, of course, and I had somebody to care about her. So I had some time not to think about what happened. So I'm not telling this long story, how I feel, and so on, but the situation, of course, changed very much. My husband and I, we tried not to say, like, told ya, because we left Russia because of Crimea's occupation. And for us, it was very important that we were right moving out, I mean. And especially for
then
me.
The affirmation came, you think?
For me, yes. Yeah, I was not sure that it was a good thing because our friends, they stayed in Russia and they had their network, They helped each other very much in everyday life, in professional life. They were communicating with each other and we were not alone, of course. We had some friends and we found new friends here too. Yeah, it's one thing. Another thing, because we had a hard time with jobs. After my project at the uni was finished and it was not prolonged. So, it was a hard time. And then our job market came to our city, because people from Russia started to leave Russia, of course, because of repressions and mobilization and many other things, and also sanctions, many of them. They are not our friends. I mean, we don't have friends among those who were not happy with consumer thing in Russia. But many of Russians, they are here because they first had a possibility, like language, visa, passport, education, job or something. And second, because they couldn't stay there. That's how I met the organization I work in today for the 4th year already. And we started to relaunch their project, which were before this in Russia, very popular.
Exactly, for safety reasons. We are being a bit mysterious, but I think people will connect the dots.
Yeah. And yes, all the tragedies we are live in still. It's one of the reasons I'm still running this educational project, because the Soviet history is not solved yet, for Russia at least. I mean, it's not realized, it's not analyzed. The trauma is still there on one side, and on the other side, this patriotic propaganda doesn't see any details of human lives or suffering and so on. So we work with the war too, these full-scale invasions, consequences.
It seems that, in general, you're, I think, interested in your journalistic work and academic work in the stories of people, communities. You like traveling and listening to people. You did an amazing project, I think, about the Mari people. And that's more a visual project with photographers, videos.
It was a small team of 3 people, 2 photographers. One is more art photographer, and another is more documentary photographer and journalist, Fyodor and Alexander, and me. And Natasha, right. And my role was rather to interview people and to write texts. But at the end, of course, the whole project was made by this team. Not only text by me and pictures by the guys, because we discussed everything and they influenced the text and I somehow maybe influenced the pictures and so on. And it was very interesting for me. I had some, I would say, ambition to make it in some decolonizing perspective and to show other people how Mari people live. At the same time, visual language is not so clear, decolonizing, I would say. So it was, for me, hard work, and at the same time, very interesting. We used some costumes, for example, which looks not so decolonizing. Mm-hmm. A little bit exoticizing. But they really use it. These people in villages. Not every day, of course, but for some important days when they go to cemetery, village cemetery, for example, when they are running their rituals and so on. Not all of them and not every day, but they use it. It was not like a souvenir thing.
It's still in use. It's an ethnic minority in Russia.
Yeah, that's right.
Ural Mountains, they live?
They live, yes, in Ural region, but they moved to this region from Volga region, and they started to move in the 16th century because of Russian invasion. I mean, it's not funny at all, but the history comes back. And back and back and back, again. So Russians started to build their empire in the 16th century. And they had their Tsar, Ivan the Terrible, Ivan Grozny. And he is very popular, by the way, in Russia as a historical hero. I would say. Yeah, because he made Russia great. Mm-hmm. So he started a war with Kazan state. I'm not sure I know how to say it in English. He won, And in this state, there were many different people who lived, different communities, and some of them were Muslims. Others, they ran their traditional beliefs. And some of them were Mari, who started to resist the Russians. And they ran the war for 30 years. 30 years they tried to keep their beliefs, because for Ivan and for the Russians those time, it was important to make them Christians. And if people were not Christians, they paid more taxes, for example. And many other things were limited for them. After 30 years, they failed, because Russia was stronger, of course. And some of them moved from their this place to more wild place behind the Ural Mountains, if we look from Moscow part. Mm-hmm. So on the east. And they moved several centuries, by groups. And they still keep their beliefs there. It was not allowed for them, for example, to live in cities. So they had to stay in villages. They couldn't make some metal things, smith, because Russians were afraid that they would make a weapon and
rebel again.
So some of them still not from the 16th century, but these people are still Mari people. They keep their beliefs. They had some crises, of course, of the 20th century. Yeah, in the 70s, for example, it was not very nice for them to wear their costumes, because it was like too traditional. They wanted to be modern. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and only old people could do it, and young people would never do it. But like 15 years later, late 80s, it already became very fashionable.
Came back.
Yes.
They embraced their tradition.
Yeah, so they found these clothes in their homes of their grannies, for example, and started to wear it again.
Fascinating. How many of Russians do actually know the history of the Mari people?
I don't know.
Is it a familiar thing?
No. At first, when these two photographers, Sasha means Alexandra, the same thing, and Fedya asked me to join the project, the first thing I thought, because I saw some pictures, and I thought, they are, of course, fake. It's impossible.
That something like this still exists.
Believe in their traditional things. For example, ghosts. But it's very bad translation. It's not ghosts, it's local gods, I would say. Mm-hmm. And that they wear their costumes, and maybe they want to sell themselves in this way. It was my first thought, because I knew nothing about it. And the first trip, I had about 10, I think, for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I was flying already from Berlin. So for me, it was
long way.
First Moscow. But my mom lived in Moscow this time. So I had a pit stop in Moscow, then flew to Yekaterinburg. And then we had like 6 hours drive to these villages. And the first trip showed me that I was wrong, that it's very Moscow view to other people in Russia. I'm fighting this, this my Moscow heritage every day, but sometimes I fail, of course.
The big city kind of view on the other.
Not just big city, but for Russia, Moscow is the only city of its kind. It's a capital of everything, including finance. There are too much resources in this city, so the whole Russia can be divided in Moscow and non-Moscow. Mm-hmm. So that's my point. Mm-hmm. There are other big cities, of course, but the Moscow view is very special because it feels like the only place to live for people who live there. Mm-hmm. That's my struggle. And in Russia, which is a huge country, thank you, Ivan the Terrible, and the followers, there is only one capital which is situated on the very west, if we look at the map. Mm. It's a wild thing.
Totally, yeah. If you look at the map, it's crazy.
So the inner migration is on very high level always, because people want to live in Moscow, and I understand them, because there is a job, money, services, everything. Yeah, it's shame.
One of the important questions that I think a lot of people ask themselves, and as you are academic, cultural worker, and Russian as well, I wanted to ask your opinion of showing and displaying arts by Russian artists contemporary in Europe.
It depends on meaning of the word Russian. Sorry for this philosophical question, but I think it's important if the artist still lives in Russia, pays taxes, for example, or can go to the war from Russian side, or this person doesn't live in Russia and doesn't visit it. It's the best situation. It's my opinion, private one. So if this person is inside Russia, I would say it will be strange to show this art, even if it's very critical, which I doubt. If this person lives outside Russia, it doesn't have any, plans to move back. I don't see any problems. I mean, I see some, not problems, but there can be some things which this person doesn't see because he's from Russia, but it can be a reason not to show this art. That's my point.
Would you expect like a statement
from this person?
Yeah. About contemporary political situation,
yes,
for example?
That would be nice. I understand that it sounds, for Russians at least, like discrimination, but the war is still going, and until it's not finished, we, Russians, have to show our political views every time. And it's okay. People can do it.
What are your dreams? What are you working towards?
Well, I'm very, very inside these educational programs I'm running. So unfortunately, I don't have much time to do something else. But I'm working on this. So it's the first thing, to have to manage, not to have, to have means that somebody gives it to you. But in my situation, I have to give it to myself, some time to do something else, because it helps. And I have a project, a concept, an idea, to make a big object, and at the same time to make research. It's connected to looted things during the war, anywhere, during a war. And I would connect some things that Soviet people brought from Germany in the late 40s, after the Second World War, to any other looting, including those in Ukraine today. Before the full-scale invasion, I had an idea, and I started to do it. I interviewed people who brought some valuable things from Germany to Russia mostly. During, for example, 1945 in May in Berlin, not only in Berlin, people were stealing things from empty apartments or houses. And then later they started to buy these things when the Soviet army was in the GDR. I include these things too, not only looted but also bought, but not on the fair rules, conditions, right? And it was before the war. And I thought because Soviet people were poor, if we compare with Germans. Not all of them, but the big picture is like this. And they were shocked which level of everything had Germans, which were enemies, and Russians won. And they came to Germany and found like rich houses with thin fabrics, very expensive and so on. So they brought some of these things to the Soviet Union. And nowadays, these things, not only looted, also bought, they are a kind of family relicts. And people say, oh, it's my granddad brought to my granny, and it's very important for our family thing, and so on. So they didn't analyze how it happens to be there and so on. So I was very interested in this, as an anthropologist. And at the same time, I didn't want to do just research, it's It's hard, but still it was a little bit boring for me just to research and write something. I wanted to express myself. So I started to make some object, and it had to be like, do you know what Bayeux tapestry? Do you know this object? It's a very long, like 70 meters, very old, early 12th century, I think. Like a tapestry. It's not exactly tapestry, it's more a fabric, a textile, which tells the story of Hastings battle. Like a comic book divided in frames. So I thought to make a kind of homage, to this Bayeux tapestry, and to make it about the Second World War. And to tell a story how people brought some things to, not about battles, the war itself, rather about this material culture, which were installed in another context, being brought from Germany to the USSR, to big cities, of course, and became something else there.
Lost different value.
Yes, lost their meaning and got another one, this life of the
life
object.
Of the object.
Yeah. Now it changed, of course, because 2022 showed that, yes, people still looting goods, but it's just a washing machine or something like this. It's not about cultural, and it's not a fair war for the people who are looting. So for the Soviets, it was obvious that they have right. We don't discuss if they had or not, right? It was their idea that we have a right because they attacked us. In this war, nobody attacked Russians, but they invading Ukraine. They still looting things as if they have this right. Yeah, so the next step is not ready yet. I think I have to somehow change the idea.
Cool. Wow, I didn't expect so much sharing. So nice. Thank you so much. Lastly, as we are running out of time, I always finalize the podcast on speaking about food. We're also like at the dinner time now. You live so long outside of home, but I'm sure you still in some way keep the culture and the food here, maybe in a new format and way. What is your favorite food from home?
Oh God, all my answers are too complicated, but I'll try. Yes,
it's a complicated question.
Yeah, I can easily say about some not cuisine but products I miss very much, and it's berries. It's wild strawberry and it's cloudberry, because I spent my childhood in summers. Every year we travel to Karelia. It's northern part of Russia, and in July, I think, they have only 2 weeks of cloudberry time. The only country which have cloudberry is Finland now. So if somebody goes to Finland, and this time I ask them to bring me fresh cloudberry, because so cool. Cloudberry jam from IKEA doesn't work. It's another thing.
And this was it for today. Thank you for reaching till the end of this episode. The next one is coming in 4 weeks, always on Monday. Please follow the podcast and leave a rating. I'm also happy to hear your feedback, so feel free to write me via Instagram or by email. All the needed info you will find in the show notes of this episode. In the meantime, take good care and we hear each other soon.